All right, so let's call to order the work session for Lower Suffolk Township Board of Supervisors, Tuesday, March 5th, 2024. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, unified, indivisible, with liberty.
Thank you. You think, Dave? All right, first item on our agenda this morning, a public comment. If there is anyone who wishes to be recognized. No takers. Public Works Director, Mr. Jones.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. Just a department update. First of all, projects. Streetlight upgrades. I just received word last night that all the materials are in at the supplier. So hopefully they'll get to the installer and get installed within the next week or so. Finally. Sure. We're hoping. So we're finally getting it. It appears anyway, so that's progress. Good news. On the Public Works and Community Center facilities, CKS is working on the community center site plan. Hopefully delivery of mid-March or sooner. Stephanie's coordinating our efforts for the grant application to and trying to pull everything together from all the affected parties and involved parties. Boyle submitted their timeline for all their tasks, so we're got that to incorporated in the grant. So we're moving forward with that, and Stephanie's doing a heck of a job and herding the cats and keeping everyone on task and on schedule. So that's a huge effort and much appreciated. Main Street Sidewalk Project. This is from Quarry Road to Ruth Road. We have a meeting with Smile Realty scheduled for March 14th to discuss their involvement and their financial contribution. We're also working on the costs for the sign relocations for all three of those properties that are affected by the project. For the garage rental at 804 Harleysville Pike, I'm working with the owner's attorney on the lease agreement details. So we're continuing on that. I was told that there's some kind of a sale this weekend there. So I don't think it's an auction or through an auction house, but I think it's, their efforts on their own to try to do like a Facebook yard sale kind of a thing. But they're working on it. So hopefully we get everything ironed out. Hopefully April 1st, that we can take occupancy of that. That might be still optimistic at this point, but we're hopeful. On the grants, just some updates on the Green Light Go. 2 applications were submitted for the signal modernizations. One was for Maine and Maple, and the other is for Maine and Huntsburger. So those are in, and now we just wait and see if we've been successful in our application and our efforts. The Arley grant for the bike lane striping and the raised pavement markers on Indian Creek Road. I had AMS, who is our Nova Chip and Cape Seal contractor, take a look at Indian Creek Road to see if that was a good candidate for the Nova Chip. And actually they recommend doing a hot mix overlay just because of the truck traffic and just the amount of traffic, the type of traffic that road gets. So we have the opportunity to do that work as part of our equipment rental contract that's already in place. So it wouldn't be anything that we would have to bid separately in order to do the work. It's going to be prevailing wage because it's going to be part of a PennDOT project, liquid fuels project, but at least it will get done, and we can then assist with hauling materials and that kind of stuff, so to try to minimize our costs. And we buy the material at our cost. We're not paying contractor markup, all those kinds of things. So we're working on that. Speaking of contracts, working on our specs for our base repair contract and for our pavement markings. So working on those 2 items. Some parks work. Roth Park improvements, I put in front of you, a list of the planned and proposed improvements for the park. There's also, kind of a crowded sketch of everything that we're hoping to do. We really take a concerted effort in trying not to be short-sighted with any of these improvements that we do. Try to take a long-term approach, and even though it's more time-consuming and maybe a little bit more costly, but we look at it as like, while we're there doing this work, let's make sure we do it and think long-term. Unfortunately, that's, we say that these projects go from a snowball into an avalanche. And this is a prime example. This, basically started as a fence relocation project. It's currently, a post and rail fence around the playground that we wanted to, replace with chain link. So that was a primary focus, but then it's kind of morphed into looking at the playground area, and which is a difficult site to begin with. But right now it's like 3-tiered. You've got the upper swing set, you've got the play area, and then you've got the lower swing set. So our plan is to take that upper swing set, remove it, basically grade everything down so it's close to being the same elevation as the play area. And so it makes transition and moving around within the site a lot more easily accessible for whomever needs it. And then shrinking the fenced in area, and then basically playground mulching the whole thing, so it's essentially maintenance free, other than, adding some playground mulch once a year. So that's part of it. In order to do that, we've added some additional parking there that's, on the Maple Avenue side, which was already being used. People were parking on the grass, and actually that's part of what damaged the fences. Trucks park, back into the, backing in, even where the car bumpers are, parking bumpers are. When you back into it, the rear of the vehicles hits the fence before they hit the tires hit the parking bumpers. So it's damaging the fence. That's why we're moving the fence away from there and just creating some additional parking that's sorely needed anyway. In order to do that, and also to look at the circulation through that site, right now we've got a bottleneck where those 2 planting islands are. So the plan is to remove one, shrink the other, create 2-way access through open that bottleneck up, create some additional parking, parallel parking on the one side, move the perpendicular parking closer to the pond to give us enough room for 2-way access and circulation through the site. Also removing some of the trees. Right now, there are 2 huge sweet gum trees that are just dirty. They drop the little balls, little spiny balls, and they're just a mess, and it's constant. No matter how much we clean them up, there's still ones that are hanging on from last year that'll drop sometime this year. So plan is to remove them, relocate the path, do some improvements there, add some more benches, eventually plant some additional trees, in between. Look at maybe some kind of a shelter over the bench areas to provide some shade till the trees become more mature, because we realize that there's going to be an impact when we take those huge trees down, especially in the summertime. So there's a lot of effort, a lot of work that we'd like to do. We're also looking at installing a railing along the pond area, along the concrete wall. Just from a safety standpoint, and then we're going to do some paving it up against that, to make sure that we don't have any issues. And I don't know that it's been a problem, but I think with a railing that, we could still easily accessible for anybody that wants to fish, either over or between the railings. So I think that would work. What else? Long term, we're looking at a new roof on the pavilion, because that pavilion needs some work, and we're looking at standing seam roofing that we think we can do ourselves. So all this is, again, it's the snowball that turns into an avalanche. But I just wanted to
To
give
add,
you folks an idea
to add to your avalanche, where's the property line here?
on which side.
On the drive aisle, because I just put up one of my apps on that. It looks like the rears of the lots for the units that front on to Main Street extend almost to the midway point or just outside of the parking lot area on what would be the right-hand side of your drawing there.
Mike, can you pull that up, please?
So I just worry, the only thing I was gonna, when you say you're adding some new parking, the new parking green over there,
The
I'm not sure if that
parallel
might not be on the back of someone, of the other property owner.
We found a stake, it looks like it's the property pin, when we had this survey done by CKS.
Okay.
In order to do the site plan for the public works improvements. That. Yeah, can you do an aerial, Mike?
It's just a freaky and not that it should be even for the property owner. but
Yeah,
just to
we
make sure
looked
we're
at, we took that into consideration, we think we're
right on the edge.
close, but definitely on our property.
Okay.
And I know there's a drop off there.
Right.
So our plan is to basically excavate down and install bin blocks along that entire perimeter. And then build our parking area up from there. And then install fencing along that drop off, so anybody that gets out of the car on the fence side. Doesn't have a drop off that at night when they're not, somebody's going to the bar or whatever, could just easily step off and have an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, that's not accurate.
Okay.
So it's basically, I mean, those existing parking, where that orange car is, we're back behind that.
So then,
The
that,
parking is on our.
the line is offset too far. Got it.
Yeah, according to the survey that CKS did, and that's the best information that we're gonna.
Better than, yeah.
Absolutely. So, yeah, so we looked at that and took that into consideration, to make sure that we were gonna be on our property or, like I said, right there at the property line at the very worst.
And you're gonna replace some of the trees
Yes, yeah, the
with better trees.
better, more appropriate trees, unfortunately, they're gonna be, smaller trees, but it's gonna take some time before they provide the shade canopy, that's gonna be effective. So yeah, depending on cost, we may look at, like I said, some of those, bench shelter combination, that we could easily install. Just something to provide a little bit of shade for the park users, for the fishermen, and also for just people that wanna just enjoy the park, enjoy the setting, so that, they're not out baking in the sun. There's still a couple of trees that will remain. But the two biggest ones that are immediately adjacent to the pond are gonna go away in order to make room for other improvements and also to eliminate the mess and the maintenance.
The roots of these larger trees are often starting to buckle up and everything else.
Absolutely.
It makes sense.
They're welcome for that.
They're not good trees.
I appreciate all the considerations you put into this stuff, and I said, this is a stupid question, the only question I would say, one, is just curiosity of the timeline. And two, again, I think this is wonderful, my only suggestion, and I'm sure board might feel this way, is go through the park board as well, as they are experts in this, and we work real hard at that, but again, I think this is great, I'm curious if this does go forward, what would the timeline be?
We did run it past the park board, I provided this information, and Ken can speak to.
Yeah, part of thrilled with the whole concept, and also very impressed with Doug's looking ahead, not just looking at band-aiding a couple problems. It's trying to fix the good thing permanently, which is really nice. Wonderful.
As far as timeline, it's gonna be kind of a phase project. The immediate project is to get the playground area addressed. And excavated so that we can get the fence installed. To eliminate that, right now, we've got orange construction fencing, in front of parts of it. Initially, we're gonna leave the parking areas in stone. Till we get our new paver, and we can put that to the test, and then, pave the parking areas, and then we can look at restriping. So that we can make the parking areas appropriate. The railing, we're looking at installing sooner than later. I mean, that's a budgeted issue along with the fence. So that money is accounted for. So some of the other things we may have to look at, future budgets. We have park benches in stock that we've purchased when they were on sale. So we've got some available park benches that we can install. So, a lot of this is going to be within the next month. And then we may end up just sitting on things for a while until we get into paving season, and then we can schedule a lot of the rest of it from there. So the tree removal hopefully will be taken care of. The other thing we need to work around is the fish stocking.
Yeah.
Trout stocking, which is coming up at the end of the month, and that's the location where we always do the school kids and the preschool kids, so. It would be nice to have those trees removed in that area kind of graded flat, so it gives us more room for that, but we don't want to interfere with that. And we also have to be mindful of the daycare, their use of the playground. So there's going to be some inconvenience to them when we're obviously going to have to close the playground while we're working inside of it. But hopefully we can get this done before the weather really turns good. And, then, the use really picks up. So that is the plan.
So if you farm your services out, I have a driveway you can.
Any other questions for Doug on the park? Authorization to sell a couple of pieces of equipment.
Yes. We have two pieces of equipment. One is the old paver. It's, pushing 40 years old or better. So it's in with our new paver, hopefully scheduled to be delivered sometime end of April. That'd be an opportunity right now to put it on municipal bid and try and get rid of it, and get the most for it. We also took delivery of a new F-250 pickup truck. So then the 2005 Ford pickup is not 550, I'm sorry, it's a 250 pickup truck that would no longer have use, go away. So
I'd make a motion to authorize the sale of the paver and the 2005 F-250.
Second.
Moved and second, and all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Motion carries.
So just to finish up on some other things at Briarwood Park, we're looking at resurfacing, redecking the fishing pier, and putting railing there. We have a grant for that work, which would also include solar power aerators to try and mitigate the algae problem at that location, which is definitely our worst time for algae. And we're also working with the Parkview and Watershed Conservancy on floating treatment wetlands. So they've come up with an innovative solution that they're itching to try out, and for us to be a guinea pig, and they're willing to provide the plant material and some of the labor to do the install. So we're going to try and take advantage of that as well, and see how it works. So just some department activities, still spending a significant time on sign replacement, especially in the golf course community, where at least 50% of the signs are within utility conflicts, especially electric, that have to be hand dug. So it's time consuming, but it also kind of, drives home the importance of the PA1 going there for all these. It's, for the guy's safety when we're driving steel posts into the ground. So the last thing we need to do is contact electric with something that put, part of the team in harm's way. So
Are we capturing that data as you do on our GIS system? Like pictures of so that when they do this again, they have some background data?
As far as where the utilities are?
And pictures, if there's anything really close or anything unique about where some of what they're finding when they dig it up or whatever.
I don't know if we're capturing that information, but required to do a notification.
Oh, yeah.
We do an excavation, and there's a certain time frame in which the excavation is good.
Right.
So once it expires, technically we need to do a re-notification of the one call, or calling a new notification. So anything that's, going to happen 2 years from now, we're still gonna have to do another PA one call.
Oh,
We are
recognize that.
capturing the new information with the new post, the new sign, the dates, pictures of all of it. So all of that, yes, gets entered
Okay.
into Tracer so that we have updated current information as to what's out there and when it was installed.
Got it.
So yes, we are doing that. Again, a lot of tree work that we're doing. We had a situation where we had a tree came down in the winds. I guess, last weekend, the weekend before, on Old Skipback Pike, just right by the Bay Pony. Had, utility took down a pole. Fortunately, it was Verizon and not Pico. So we were able to work with the Verizon crew, remove the tree. And there was also part of the tree was on private property, but it was teetering in the wind. So we were able to, and with my guys' expertise, which I was very impressed with the way it was done and how it was done. We were able to remove that tree and take it down safely and without, we had a little minor incident with, a mirror getting damaged by one of the limbs, but with our bucket truck that we use and with the guys, that, I was really impressed and happy with how, our team handled it, so.
Good.
Yeah, again, talk about the park work, the old firehouse and the parks garage, we're, reusing what was storage space in the basement. We convert that into our sign shop, store all of our signs and do a fenced in area behind it to put all the used signs, all the used posts and everything so that it's kind of enclosed out of sight and in the same location as the signs themselves. Part of the issue that was stored in there, we have 400 recycling bins that we've acquired through, I'm not sure how. The Western Montgomery Recycling Coalition, and there's some other decal or label on them. And we also have about 140 of these recyclemates, which are used oil recycling canisters, containers. We talked about trying to sell them or, do we just give them to residents, offer them up to residents? I'm sure that that's why they were purchased, but I don't know how or when they were required.
Is the system still in? What do you do with them after?
You gotta find a home.
They'll be taken.
Sorry?
These will still be, somebody would still take these. Like the recycling. They're not outdated.
Well,
That's what it's-
Yeah, I think-
it's just a
What
container.
you can do is when there's a recycling.
You can just take them and drop those off.
Yeah, or if there's a gas station or something that uses
Yeah,
waste oil for heat,
right.
use waste oil burners. I mean, that's what we do with ours. We have a local entity that takes it and uses it, so we're recycling our, all the waste oil that we generate. So I mean, we could put that on the website, constant contact, the Facebook page, this along with the recycling bins, and then it's being put to local use. So,
For that.
Yeah.
That might be good to put on new resident information is that if people need recycling bin.
yeah, I mean, most haulers provide
Big bins. Yeah.
for recycling now, since it's single stream, but you can use the recycling bins for storage or for whatever, so. We have them and right now they're just taking up space, so we have them over in the Miller barn right now, then we moved them out of the basement of the parks garage, so. So that's something we'd like to do. Couple more things, actually last thing is that, township received the Divot Innovation Award for our backup camera system for our large trucks. So, kudos to Steve Delicat, mechanic, for the install. I know it wasn't the cameras themselves, but it was the install that garnered the award, so. Good for Steve. Township gets $1,000 award. We get a luncheon and a plaque and just, a huge pat on the back and an article in Divot newsletter. So
All those.
all good. That is all that I have. Be happy to answer any questions.
I have one question, Doug.
Sure.
And I noticed it actually twice this month, Maple and Oak, you're headed towards, I want to say west, southwest. coming up, if, the old Nationwide would be on your right, as you come to that stop sign. No striping on the side as there is going the other way. And today even I noticed up here, two cars at the same time, one making a right, one going straight. But I've noticed it a few times.
Heading towards, Harleysville Pike?
If you're headed towards Harleysville Pike,
Okay.
yeah, Harleysville Insurance will be on your right,
Gotcha.
make it right up to there's a post office, but yeah, often there we go, yeah. I guess that's southwest. Yeah, right there, there's just a lot of space, and I've noticed twice now in the last month, as I said this morning, too, two headlights right there. One person made a right at the same time the other person was going straight at the stop sign. I was just wondering, you can see the stripe on the other side, if that's something that could be considered or look into possibly striping to prevent something like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably not stripe, it's a curb.
Yeah, and any idea to, open to obviously any suggestions, it's something that I noticed twice, again, this morning, I was like, oh. There's a lot.
Well, there's barely enough space, but there's enough space, I guess.
There's. And I take that dozen times, a week at least, and there is a lot of space, but.
When we install our roundabout there, that'll take care of it. But yeah, we'll look at that, we also have an
Spikes.
issue with castle and threats where we've got trucks that continually hit the guide rail.
Yeah.
There that we're looking at trying to,
How do they-
work with PennDOT to provide some kind of a solution there. Maybe some delineators, it makes it difficult for plowing, but it would at least provide some kind of a marking.
Which direction are they coming when they hit,
They're coming out of Castle,
making the right turn?
making the right turn
It is
for
perfect.
Yoder.
Hmm.
And the problem is you gotta, there's not enough room
It's
for
like-
larger trucks. They've got to swing out into oncoming traffic. So
They should avoid that route.
they have to be,
On Google, man, instead
I
of.
think
taking
they,
that route.
at least one resident that's on Bridle Path, they're very happy with eliminating truck traffic on Castle Road. So maybe Stephanie, we look at that, if that's something that would qualify and meet a warrant for no truck. I mean, you're not going to get 100% compliance, but if you get 80% compliance and,
It's just the offset of that intersection is not.
yeah, there's not enough room, like I said, not enough room to pull out and the curvature. And it's difficult because of the bridge in such close proximity to the intersection. There's not a whole lot that they can do with the guide rail as far as pushing it back and still meet the criteria for the crash worthiness into the bridge above. So that's their concern. So they essentially they're limited in what they can do as far as the location of the guide rail. So, and it is PennDOT's guide rail, but it's just something that, we have to kind of fight with them. And it's probably been damaged, chief, 3 or 4 times in the last 2 years. So it's something we're looking at as well, trying to see if we can come up with a solution with.
It's gonna be an ongoing problem, because like I said, they're all following Google now, these
Yeah.
truck drivers.
Yeah,
What are you out, Upper Main and Kinsey sign, seems like you're out there every other week replacing that, because they're making that turn. And they
Yeah.
can't, they just wipe the sign out and keep going,
right.
But
But at least, the alternative would be continue on Schoolhouse to Wamble to Fred's.
Right.
So there would be.
Right.
It's out of the way, sure, but at least it's a more appropriate path to avoid that intersection. So we'll take a look at that as well. And Kevin, I'll also look at that intersection for additional striping.
That's sad, it was like looking at appropriate, just off the head, like,
Yeah, we'll look at it. So.
thank you.
Anything else for Todd? All right, moving right along.
Thank you,
Chief
Doug.
Bedwin.
Lights from? The only thing I had was the periodic update on the park cameras. We're now up to 5 parks, total of 17 cameras. This is the 16 camera view park at, we used to have a PTZ. We just finished right and added a 4th camera. Swap the PTZ with one of the, because the PTZ is on the greenhouses and it's a little close, can't even back up. So we're PTC on the house. And every part has the entrance / exit with a fixed camera. So if somebody comes in with bad intent, good news is they always use the entrance. Don't want to discourage that.
Yeah.
So every camera has the captured. The PTCs are pretty good. We've almost every morning somebody's come to the Wawa. And Wawa's the only one we have an issue with because the reception is still poor down. They put an antenna on it. It's still capturing, but our ability to manage it from here, there's a delay when you're shooting in, but somebody pulls near the falls. Almost every morning somebody's in there walking a dog or whatever, and you can get right in and get license plates. So it's really working out very well. So on a back burner, Oliver and Park Avenue, we have some utility issues both, but I guess Oliver is probably closer.
Yes.
To getting a pole, getting the box hung, et cetera, where the new parking lot is. And eventually we'll have to cut down closer to the pavilion, the lower fields. So that'll be a double pole operation. Supposed to get the pole, the power, and better.
You also have access to the golf course. through the system.
And I'm not sure, Ken, what's going on with the community center.
Community center is hopefully gonna hook up at some point. We're just trying to figure out how to fund it. Yeah.
So they're both private camera systems that get the IP address and I think the golf course was about 22 cameras.
Yeah.
We know some. That's, sure you so, well, you don't need to go into it, but we have access to them. 22 cameras. Monitoring it, it's recorded. And we recently did a check because eventually it will overwrite itself. And we're looking at some storage, possible storage, to put a server at the building, but we got back to November. About a week or two ago, so.
Oh, wow.
Can't imagine that it'd be more than that. So.
As we add cameras, there may be.
Talk on the whistle.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the more cameras.
Well, the cameras have the storage in them individually. Yes.
Yeah.
That's what we weren't sure how it stored. Michael called,
Yeah, he actually moved from the SIM cords,
right,
so each terabyte hard drive.
Oh,
the camera.
Which apparently is, a lot.
you know, that's a fun number too.
Yeah. So, may not have it with storage, cloud storage.
Right.
Probably.
Right.
But we just have the monthly train, Verizon, whatever, $30 per site.
Great.
So the picture is worth 1,000 words, and I'm pretty close to Doug.
When you go, bro.
Hit plug in. That's all I have.
Thanks, Tom.
Any questions for Tom?
Sure.
Patient, I'm gonna be awake.
Next up,
Somebody's gotta waste their time.
Chairman, for the month of February, we actually had a pretty busy month of building and zoning. 61 permits were issued as compared to 36 last year. We have been trying to work on some of the ordinance amendments that we've had tabled for a while. One being restaurant parking, we're discussing that with the planning commission. Another being stormwater management and potential ordinance for that. There's an ordinance that we have proposed for an ordinance amendment for parks for storage of
storage of personal property and vehicles on open space and park space, rec space, and just to clarify it in the ordinance for enforcement purposes. And for your meeting tomorrow, we heard the 196 Main Street conditional use at the last week's planning commission meeting, and the planning commission is generally in favor of moving that forward. And what they asked for the applicant to do is to come back next month in front of the planning commission for more like land development items and not necessarily additional use items. They suggested that the board of supervisors move forward the conditional use process and authorize advertisement. Again, they'll be back in front of the planning commission, but things like landscaping and dumpster location and facade improvements. Again, those are generally for land development items that will be also addressed during the land development process after they follow. So we have that, plus the proposed sign ordinance amendments would be up for potential to adopt.
Thanks, Mike. Any questions for Mike?
Thanks, Mike.
Thanks, Mike.
One question, quickly, Mike, if you don't mind. On 196, just out of curiosity, these are land development, so nothing that we're going to approve for the authorization will change in that one.
Right, the authorization advertising would be for the conditional use hearing, which would potentially be in April.
Right.
And the items that they would button up for the planning commission.
Are related separately to land development.
Correct. They're generally land development items and necessarily conditional use items. So that's why the planning commission wants to see the applicant again next. Okay, but then they said, you know, it doesn't make much sense to hold up the conditional use process. So they suggested that move that forward. So it would be correct with the plan and revisit to the planning commission. So they'll see the planning commission at the end of March, and then that would be when they would give their recommendation regarding the conditional use, and then the hearing follow.
And if they don't give their recommendation, the hearing would have to be postponed.
Any other questions for Mike? Thank you. Thanks, Mike. Mr. Chakowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under the manager's report, the first item is the review of the February 7th Board of Supervisors meeting minutes. Additions. The next item is the review of the March 6, 2024 agenda. The unfinished business. The ordinance 2024-02 sign ordinance amendment. This, as you recall, is the temporary sign ordinance amendment, which would deal with, you know, the smaller signs you see on corners throughout the township advertising all sorts of different things, developments and restaurants and all sorts of things. As well as would indicate, like if you better description of it, that would give descriptions about, you know, First Amendment issues and
Right, personal expression in regard to personal expression signs, so it regulates those and any type of temporary sign. And it gives, it would finally give the maximum allowable area of temporary signs and a maximum size that they could be in the ordinance. Currently, there aren't any regulations regarding temporary signs, or they're unclear within the ordinance, so it's clarified our existing ordinance and sets those parameters.
Okay, under new business, resolution 2024-06, approving an agreement to transfer the municipality golf course liquor license to the Lower Southwood Township Recreation Authority. This is a requirement of the LCD as the liquor is being sold at the club at the golf course. They're requiring that the owners of the course, which is in technicality, the Recreation Authority, be the owners of the liquor license. So the township, which currently the township owns the liquor license, will be transferring it to the authority. The next item is 196 Main Street, which we just discussed. And finally, a request for fire police assistance for Commons Community Day on Saturday, May 11th, 2024. So the next item under the manager report, I will just, the next 4 items under the manager report are Stephanie Butler is here with us this morning from very early Texas morning.
Sun is up, so that's good.
Thank you, Butler.
All right, I do have a number of items to talk about this morning. I'll try to make it relatively quick, but we had a busy week last week. We did meet with the Trail and Sidewalk Committee last Monday. So the first 3 items are a result of that meeting and discussion, and we wanted to discuss with the board some of the next steps. So the first item is the Oak Drive right turn lane and sidewalk project. Mike, if you could share that plan. We talked about this a few meetings ago. But from the Trail and Sidewalk Committee meeting, we had some right-of-way property concerns with the corner property. And we talked about revising the intersection layout of this plan. And so instead of bringing the sidewalk all the way down Moyer and tying into the existing sidewalk that heads into Bell Lane, we talked about crossing at Moyer, upgrading the ramps at the intersection, and a small piece of sidewalk up to essentially the steps on that corner, and utilizing the existing sidewalk on that side of the road down to the Pondview Drive location. The reason for this really was to try to avoid affecting the shrubbery and whatnot that's along Moyer Road on the corner property. We would have needed to acquire the right-of-way in that area. Long story short, there was an offering for road widening 49 years ago. I did meet with Andy last week, and we discussed that that really was not something that could just be acted upon and taken back to the legal right-of-way. So this is a slightly modified layout at the intersection, but this is the direction that the sidewalk committee wanted us to take a look at and potentially move forward. So the reason I'm here this morning to talk about this would be the next steps. We do need to talk to 2 property owners for the area of right-of-way that is not in the township hands at this point. But in doing so, we'd also like to discuss moving forward with a DCED multimodal transportation grant application. Those are due in July. But there are some steps obviously between now and then that need to be taken care of. So one recommendation from the sidewalk committee was to pursue that application with this project. So that being said, I wanted to present that summary. And if there's any questions moving forward, I'm gonna jump back to my notes here 1 second. So the MTF program, it's due in July. This project has roughly a $650,000 to $700,000 range. There is no local match requirement. We do need to coordinate with those 2 property owners in the period of the application. And then I'm just looking, if this is something we would want to move forward, we would obviously provide a work authorization to prepare the application for submission.
Motion, Joe?
No, if the board was in, I could ask Stephanie to put together the proposal and then just send that back to you.
Sounds like a good idea to me.
Yeah, me to further elaborate on that sidewalk, Chairman Bergen and I were at that meeting. Really, the sidewalk was across the street. It made more sense when we're trying to figure out what will happen here, timeline. We could just go there and connect.
Yeah, that's great.
You know, I
Save money.
I would add the one thing that the reason why we were looking at the other side is, if you recall, down at Moyer and Bell, we do have ramps and a crossing that's proposed, that was submitted as part of an LSA grant application. The crossing of the Pondview leg is a little awkward because their ramps are not in the right of way and they have a median that does not accommodate heads going across their intersection. So it's a little bit awkward using that connection, but I think it all still works. There's sidewalk back into Pondview on both sides of Pondview, so the Bell Lane folks can still get across and get back to where they were headed. The Moyer Road folks and the Oak Drive folks could take this route and get back into Pondview and back to the school and the park. So it does still all work. It's just the Pondview leg is slightly off with the way their ramps are placed with their island median. It's not an easy crossing of that leg.
Were we gonna incorporate the down at Pondview, I guess? Is it Pondview? When we talk about putting ramps across there?
Yeah, that's under the other grant program.
Oh, okay.
So
Right.
those ramps are all designed, there's plans all set for those. Those were submitted as part of the LSA grant that was submitted last fall. As part of a more township-wide ADA upgrade, and that has not been announced at this point in time. So moving forward, the second project we talked about at the Trail and Sidewalk Committee was considering preparation for a grant application for engineering through the DCED Greenways Trails program. That one is due May 31st for what we're going to call the shared use path along the 113 alternate route. So out of the Walkable Letter Act study and discussions, as well as with the Trail and Sidewalk Committee, something that kept reoccurring was the fact that people were interested in having the shared use path within that location. Not so much, there was mixed reviews on the roadway itself, but the shared use path in that location. So one thing to consider would be potentially trying to pursue funding for the engineering side of the shared use path. Whether that's the full path or whether that's the southern section or the northern section, we would have to discuss that further. But it was identified in the Walkable Letter Act study. And Greenways Trails isn't typically used for engineering. However, we have seen awards in the past history of the program being given for that. So my recommendation would be to let us reach out to the DCED representative, Michael Shore, who we've met with now a handful of times on different projects and debriefs on different grant applications. And I think I would really just like to have a meeting with him to go over the scope of the trail and get an opinion as to whether or not that would be an appropriate project for the Greenways Trails program at this point in time. And then at that point, we would need to move forward with the grant application if he says yes. So I think the first step really is to talk to Mr. Shore and then go from there. Again, I just don't want to, we don't want to pursue it if he doesn't recommend that in this scenario, but it is a favorable project, I would say, from the public's view as far as the trail itself. And to answer, we had a pretty good discussion last week at the Trail and Sidewalk Committee, but I just want to reflect that any design of the trail at this location would account for the new road. So it's a little more complicated than just laying out the trail. We would need to look at the road and look at the trail and make sure that the trail was put in its ultimate location, so as not to have to change it down the road if the road ever were to come in. So that would be a little bit more complicated, but doable, given the open space that is in that area. And I know, Kevin, we had talked about that last week, just to clarify that it would be an ultimate location. So from there, I'm just looking to understand if that's a favorable project, if that's something you would like me to do, reach out to DCED to talk about that. That program is open now and due at the end of May for the application.
Absolutely.
Have the conversation.
Yep. Go forth and prosper.
All right, sounds good. Yoder Road and Culp Road sidewalk, this came up at the last work session, and we also talked about it at the Trail and Sidewalk Committee. And the consensus from the committee was to move forward or recommend moving forward with project development, such as the survey, the right-of-way, and the horizontal layout plan, very similar to what we did the last few months with the Oak Drive project, as well as what we had done with the other section of Yoder Road last year, to allow for preparedness for moving forward with grant programs later in 2024 or early 2025. So if that again is something that we were just looking for the board's opinion, I guess, on as to whether or not that would be a favorable project to move forward. And if, at that point, we would also provide a proposal for that project development, very similar to what Oak Drive looked like.
By me,
I think we like it.
yep.
Okay. We did talk about a number of other things that I'm working on from the Trail and Sidewalk Committee, coordinating with the county to update a few more sidewalk locations on the mapping. So there are a lot of other action items coming out of that committee's work, so we'll bring that up at a later time. The second separate topic, other than new projects, would be the Camp Wawa truck restriction study. If you recall, this was done a handful of years ago, but the recommendation was once the road was open, we do new counts, we see how things look, and see if the results of the study needed to change in any fashion. I did a real quick bullet point update list here. Since the original counts were done, certainly the new counts were done in December of 2023. Obviously, the volume of traffic has definitely picked up on Camp Wawa Road. However, the amount of trucks is still a very similar percentage. That's obviously going to be an increased number just because the volume of ADT is higher. But it is still a similar percentage. And I'll point you to the pages 8 and 9, which show the 2022 truck classification summary, as well as the 2023, late 2023 summary. We have roughly 84 in a given day, 84 single unit trucks. Those are your FedEx trucks, your Amazon delivery trucks. So any kind of truck restriction wouldn't impact those single unit trucks. They're still gonna be traveling Camp Wawa. The rest of the results show an increase in the larger trucks, but not significant to the point where we would expect a need for any restrictions at this point. Just in short, if you look at a 10-hour day, there's roughly 40 trucks, 4 trucks an hour that would be using that section of road. The truck restriction signs are still in place as you're coming from the east and this, from the Letterack Village side. So our opinion is we don't need to do anything different than is happening today, unless those PennDOT truck restriction signs were to be removed in the future. And we were just out there and confirmed all of the signing, all of the things that have been done. And those signs are still in place. We would not recommend asking for those to be removed in any fashion. I will also note that, interestingly enough, the 85th percentile speeds are actually slightly less now than they were originally, by a few miles an hour. So in that regard, I don't think that there is anything that we would be changing in the report itself with regard to the restriction or no restriction. I will note that there are several bulleted items listed in the not recommendation section, but in the conclusion section. And the report was, while the report was not updated, to change everything in the report to today's information. It's the original report with some information highlighted with the updates. So as you can see at the end of each bullet point, there is a line that says what the current condition is, and a lot of that has been taken care of, such as fixing the W-1 sign. The sign has been fixed. There's vegetation that has been trimmed. So really, I would just draw the attention to those bullets and the last lines in each of those sections as action items. We do still need, it looks like, to install 25-mile-per-hour advisory speed plaques for both approaches of the curve. That's primarily it. Most of the other items have been in place or have been updated. So I am just here just to provide that update with no real changes to the conclusions and look for any questions or comments.
Any questions and comments for Stephanie on the truck restrictions? No.
thought that was a pretty aggressive truck driver, the one that came with the 7-axle, double trailer and up through there. That was pretty. Yeah. Thank you, Stephanie.
Great, thank you so much.
Go back to bed now for.
Oh, no, sun's shining bright now. I'm up for good. I like to get my day started early.
There you go.
Any need for an executive session? There. Very good. With that. Oh, yeah.
At our previous meeting, it was brought up more than once that I made comments that I never said. For the record, I would like to offer some clarification. While discussing what I felt was inconsistent language regarding Zoom on the top of our agendas, I said the following statement, quote, I feel very strongly that everybody on this board, well, I know all of you would say, oh yes, make a comment, no problem. And I've seen that, unquote. A few minutes later, the chairman said the following, quote, you're suggesting we don't want people to communicate. No, that's exactly what you just said. Continued with, quote, you say things in these meetings that are really troubling, at least to me, and that's a good example right there. I watched the entire video of our last meeting. Never did I say or indicate any way what Mr. Bergman suggested I said. The chairman continued though, quote, it's really troubling. You said something the other day that we don't take people as volunteers, depending on where they work, and this has rubbed me the wrong way for 2 months. Be careful with the language you use and say exactly what you mean. That would be helpful, unquote. Now you said both a couple days and a couple months, but I imagine you were speaking about December 20th, 2023 work session, in which we discussed vacancies on our volunteer boards. Fortunately, that meeting is also on YouTube, and I went back to reference that as well. So please let me also clarify what was said at that meeting and the context in which it was said. Firstly, while I am serving in my current capacity, I would never vote in favor of somebody who is employed by my private business to serve on any of our boards, as it creates the potential for a conflict of interest. I strongly feel the same way with regards to the rest of the board. My statement that day was, quote, if we have to have a situation where 2 people abstain, we wouldn't want to have to do that, unquote. Perhaps you didn't hear me that day. I don't know how strong your internet connection was as you were participating via Zoom. I would have been happy to offer more explanation and discuss further, but your immediate response to my statement was, quote, remarkable that something derogatory would be said about that business. All right, I have to go, unquote. You then logged off the meeting before the discussion was even over. You told me to be careful with the language that I use. I never said the things that you said I said last week, and I want the record to show this. But I did find what you said trouble. I encourage you to go back and watch the YouTube videos. Did anybody say anything derogatory about your business, Mr. Bergman? No, simply that a situation like that has the potential to cause a conflict of interest. Never did I suggest that this board did not want Zoom participation. And never did I say that we don't take volunteers just depending on where they work. I simply indicated that I don't feel comfortable having an employee of your engineering firm serving on our planning commission. Thank you for letting me clarify this. I have a physical copy for you too, Mr. Bergman, just so you know exactly what I said and that I'm not misquoted. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second and all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.